There is an unseen wound that shapes the way you experience the world. This is the wake-up call for true empaths, those who feel another's pain as if it were their own. Have you ever woken in the dead of night, your heart racing at the trembling voice of a stranger echoing in your dream? Or felt suffocated by the heavy atmosphere of a passing conversation? This is no imagination. It is the rare aura of a genuine empath, a supernatural current linking you to the collective unconscious. Every day, our society applauds strength, composure, and resilience. But how many dare to admit that extreme sensitivity can become a burden? In a world that prizes hardened facades, empaths stand out as outsiders, constantly torn between the impulse to give and the instinct to protect themselves. Have you ever been drained so thoroughly by others that you felt hollow inside, or retreated from crowds to keep your heart from shattering? If you are hearing these opening words, it means you have honed your senses into a double-edged sword, granting you profound insight into others' souls, but leaving you vulnerable to devastating hurts. The question now is, how can you transform your wound into strength? How can you uphold healthy boundaries when the world constantly tries to pierce them? Pause for a moment and ask yourself, have you spent too long immersed in emotions that are not your own? Are you racing to save everyone else, forgetting that you too need healing? This passage is more than just information. It is an invitation to you, a true empath, to embark on a journey of discovering your unique aura, and from there, to walk the path of self-knowledge and self-preservation. Behind every profound empathic ability lies a story of a wound that never truly healed, a hidden scar etched into the soul from early childhood, or perhaps even a past life that the wounded healer's spirit must carry. It may be the memory of a child inadvertently witnessing domestic violence, with screams and tears echoing in their mind, forcing them to feel another's pain as if it were their own. Or it could be the piercing loneliness when love is abruptly withdrawn, leaving a cruel void that compels them to learn to read the unspoken emotions and hidden needs of others as a survival skill. From these experiences, a channel to the collective unconscious gradually forms a place where the vibrations, collective memories, and shared emotions of humanity flow into the empath's soul like an underground river without a name. This process is far from gentle. It resembles a smoldering fire. The initial injury becomes embers that forge an extraordinary capacity for empathy, transforming fragments of suffering into sturdy bridges between the self and another's heart. At a tender age, the empath is compelled to disarm, not by choice, but out of necessity, because a thick armor of the spirit only fosters isolation and vulnerability. They learn to shed that protective shell, focusing instead on listening for non-verbal cues, a flicker of the eyes, an empty stomach's growl, a heavy breath, or a pause, lingering too long in speech. Each subtle detail becomes a clue to decipher another's emotions and guide their own behavior, avoiding further harm or abandonment. This empathic sensitivity, born from personal wounds, teaches that every interaction begins with feeling before it is expressed in words. While most children grow up believing in "I speak, you listen," the empath realizes life moves through the hidden current of "I feel, you echo." They become a living barometer, sensing the emotional pressure of a crowded room within seconds of entering, not atmospheric pressure. When others laugh, the empath not only witnesses the smile but discerns the joy beneath. When others slump, they do not merely see the drooped posture but hear the heart's soft thud in anguish. Yet, this path carries peril. Without clear boundaries between one's own feelings and those absorbed from others, the empath risks becoming colored by collective pain, historical wounds, communal sorrow, even the unspoken grief of strangers. Consequently, they often feel more mentally exhausted than anticipated, burdened by an invisible load, comprised not only of personal pain but also of countless souls connected through the unconscious stream. Nevertheless, it is precisely through disarming and immersing in this energetic flow that the wound transforms into wonder. The empath learns that true strength lies not in blocking emotions, but in expanding their inner landscape without shattering. They become a bridge between individual and collective, conscious and unconscious, often the first to perceive the hidden fragments beneath a polished surface. When they step into this role, people gravitate to them for listening, comfort, and the safety to explore their own emotions. Thus, the origin of empathic ability is the fusion of personal wounds with the collective unconscious stream, tempered through the removal of protective armor and mastery of silent emotional codes. It is both a gift and a caution. Unless the wound's origin is acknowledged and the unconscious connection honored, the empath remains adrift between worlds, belonging to none. Conversely, when that wound is embraced and the unconscious channel respected, the empath truly becomes humanity's heartbeat keeper, illuminating life's darkest corners with the power of their profound sensitivity. When an empath's aura remains unguarded by boundary awareness, it becomes a magnet for both light and shadow, like an ever-burning lamp in the night. Souls unready for healing, those carrying deep insecurities or unhealed wounds, gravitate toward the empath as if seeking an emergency comfort. But they do not always come with positive intentions. Some silently drain the empath's energy, siphoning the life force the empath sacrificed so much to nurture. These emotional vampires often wear a friendly facade, blending their need for understanding with manipulative agendas. They beam warm smiles when the empath gives, yet every exchange is a trap that gradually saps the empath's vitality. Without engaging in shadow work, the vital inner work to face one's own darkness, the empath becomes a victim of their extraordinary gift. Each time they immerse themselves in others' emotions without a filtering mechanism, they re-experience old traumas, reliving feelings of abandonment, fear, or even paralysis. Others' feelings intertwine with their own to such an extent that they cannot distinguish one from the other. In moments, they believe that their rage, tension, or emptiness is destiny, something they were born to endure rather than a lack of self-preservation. They accept being an endless vessel for pain, convinced it's fate, rather than recognizing the absence of healthy boundaries. As a result, the empath gradually loses themselves. Unable to identify their own emotions, they unwittingly merge with others' suffering, reversing the natural emotional hierarchy. Hunger, boredom, and self-directed anger emerge as they run out of energy to continue giving. Instead of using empathy as a gift, they bind themselves in others' webs of emotion, forfeiting their internal freedom. At times, the empath abruptly withdraws from relationships, not out of a lack of willingness for closeness, but because they have been so thoroughly drained that they cannot offer even the smallest fragment of themselves. Sometimes, the empath may believe that the more energy they give away, the more worthy of love and approval they become. In reality, without awareness, they depend on attention, praise, or the emotional relief of others to validate their worth. This is the trap of unconditional kindness, where giving and receiving, inseparable by nature, are skewed so far in favor of giving that the empath's soul withers. Empathy ceases to be an act of gratitude and connection and instead becomes a tool to confirm their own emptiness. At this crossroads, the empath faces an unwanted choice: continue drowning in unconscious emotion, endure prolonged exhaustion, and depend on emotional vampires, or embark on shadow work, confronting, embracing, and integrating the darkest parts of themselves. Only through patient, steadfast shadow work can the empath rediscover emotional differentiation and erect healthy boundaries. They begin to understand that boundaries are not cold walls, but gentle armor, protecting their inner flame from being extinguished. With this newfound boundary awareness and commitment to shadow work, the empath moves into the journey of individuation, no longer a servant to collective emotion, but the sovereign of their inner world. Part 2 will outline a detailed roadmap, transforming wounds into enduring strength, guiding the empath step by step through the dark forest of the psyche, teaching how to light the lamp of consciousness and build living boundaries flexible enough to welcome light while keeping out invading shadow. When the empath decides to embark on the path of individuation, they begin confronting their own shadow, the anger long suppressed under the guise of being good, the buried need for self-protection sacrificed for peacekeeping, and the ability to say no, once deemed selfish, Shadow work is not merely illuminating painful memories, but an invitation to claim personal sovereignty, the right to anger when necessary, to withdraw for self-healing, and to set boundaries so as not to be swept away by others' emotions. During this phase, every aspect of the psyche, from the persona, social mask, to the archetype, unconscious pattern, is brought into the light to merge, like two rivers that once ran apart, now flowing together to forge a more integrated self. Step by step, the empath learns to heed their inner voice, long silenced by external expectations. When anger arises, rather than suppressing it, they ask, "Whom am I angry with? Why? And what do I need to protect?" Acknowledging anger does not make them aggressive. On the contrary, it lubricates the soul's boundaries, preventing the empath from losing themselves in the pursuit of pleasing everyone. Likewise, they come to see that saying no is not shirking responsibility, but affirming value. A well-timed no paves the way for sincere yes responses, allowing them to invest energy in relationships grounded in mutual respect. Throughout this journey, the empath also recognizes that the persona they crafted, the image of the ever-helpful one, was a fragile shell concealing deep-seated fears. Fear of rejection, fear of being unloved, fear of losing their place in others' hearts. By courageously shedding this persona, they no longer have to play the role of the unconditional hero and can instead present their whole self in all its facets, at times steadfast, at times vulnerable, but always authentic. Thus, individuation becomes the process of uniting the persona with the shadow and relevant archetypes, transforming empathy from an automatic reflex into a conscious, intentional practice. Once the empath accesses the core archetypes within, perhaps the wounded healer, the inner child, or the warrior, they come to understand each part's purpose. The healer embodies compassion and encouragement, but needs care themselves. The wounded child holds primal sorrow, but requires empathy. The warrior provides the strength to say no when needed, but must learn to sheath the sword when safety is assured. When these archetypes integrate with the persona, the empath's compassion ceases to be a gust of scattered wind and becomes a steady flame that guides action. The fruit of individuation is transformation. The empath not only senses others' pain, but also discerns the right timing and method to express compassion. Rather than being engulfed by an emotional flood, they become a guide, knowing when to listen and when to return energy to themselves. Psychological boundaries are erected not to shut out love, but to ensure they do not fall into the abyss of collective suffering. They realize compassion is not a burden, but a gift to be shared appropriately, so both giver and receiver may heal. Having tamed the inner flame and built gentle armor, the empath is now ready to explore a mysterious new realm, the world of symbols, dreams, and the unconscious language. Part 3 will lead them on a journey to decode hidden messages in images, metaphors, and dreams, where the unconscious not only reflects the past but points toward the future. This road is the key for the empath to deepen their insight, turning every dream into a map for self-discovery and spiritual growth. In the vast inner world of the empath, a slender boundary separates the unconscious state from the conscious one, like the line between chaos and order. The unconscious empath resembles a sponge, continuously absorbing every emotion from the surrounding world. Another's joy, someone else's sorrow, the weary traveler's sigh, and even the warrior's unvoiced cry. This sponge not only absorbs, but retains, until the unconscious empath finds themselves suffocating in a boundless ocean of undifferentiated feelings. Personal boundaries dissolve. Your loneliness merges with that of a stranger. Your happiness intertwines with another's despair. In this state, the unconscious empath is like a traveler lost in an emotional desert, unable to find a way out, carrying on their back the emotional debris that is not their own until they collapse from exhaustion. In contrast, the conscious empath stands firm as a mirror. They do not absorb others' emotions, but reflect them clearly back. When someone approaches the empath, they gently reflect that person's emotional landscape, helping them see their own inner reality rather than draining the empath's energy. That mirror maintains strong boundaries, knowing when to step forward to illuminate and when to step back so as not to overshadow another's light. It filters, accepting only vibrations compatible with its own energy, while discarding emotional noise that would disrupt. Thus, the conscious empath not only stabilizes themselves, but also creates a safe space for others to be seen and healed. The crux of this difference lies in energy management and self-awareness. The unconscious empath can be swept away by emotional currents through mere reflex, like a wet mirror attracting both light and grime, until it becomes cloudy and loses its reflective value. Meanwhile, the conscious empath continually self-monitors. Whenever they feel another's pain, they pause to ask, is this my feeling or theirs? To which story does it belong? And how should I protect my own integrity? Through this self-awareness, they prevent emotions from engulfing them and proactively guide their energy toward positive action. For example, when another person spirals into crisis, the unconscious empath might immediately feel empty, fatigued, and inclined to withdraw, believing they lack strength. The conscious empath, however, recognizes this is their emotional wave, not me collapsing. They employ breathwork, mindfulness, or boundary visualization to remain calm, then decide whether to accompany the person through their pain or provide space for independent processing. Moreover, the conscious empath understands that compassion manifests through intentional actions, not just feeling. Rather than drowning in collective sorrow, they might pose thoughtful questions, place a comforting hand on a shoulder, or choose a mindful silence to ensure the other feels heard without being overwhelmed. The unconscious empath, conversely, often retreats or dissolves into the emotional mass, leaving others with only a faint shadow rather than a solid presence. This distinction impacts not only relationship quality, but also the empath's personal growth path. The unconscious empath may follow others' emotions so closely that they lose their inner voice and life purpose, missing opportunities for self-discovery as they continuously swim in someone else's emotional currents. The conscious empath, however, can share others' pain without losing direction, learning from each experience and maturing with confidence. Once the empath has mastered themselves, no longer a sponge but a guiding mirror, the next step is to expand their capacity by exploring the language of the unconscious, symbols and dreams. Part 4 will lead them into the sacred realm of the collective unconscious, where every symbol and dream is not random imagery but a hidden message, guiding the empath deeper into their own soul and the souls of others. After transforming unconscious imagery into a guiding mirror, the empath enters the domain of symbols and dreams, where the collective unconscious sends its most delicate messages. A silent forest in a dream is not merely scenery. It represents depth, both the well-trodden paths and unexpected turns yet to be explored. When an empath dreams of being lost in the woods, it may indicate their empathic energy is depleting. The bare branches and blocked sunlight signify that their inner reserves are running low. Conversely, a lush forest bathed in dawn's gentle rays signals the revival of inner strength, suggesting it is time for the empath to reconnect with their internal source of renewal. Similarly, the image of a bowl of water in a dream symbolizes the capacity to hold emotions. The water's clarity or murkiness reveals the purity or pollution of their aura. A bowl filled with sediment reminds the empath to cleanse and reinforce boundaries, while a sparkling bowl encourages them to draw from the inner wellspring, a limitless source of energy each time they feel exhausted. A small candle flickering in the dark stands for mindful awareness. Only when the empath acknowledges their inner flame can they prevent it from being extinguished by chaotic emotional currents. Likewise, the steadfast lighthouse perched on a rocky cliff reminds the empath of their role as a beacon. Once their aura is strong enough, they not only illuminate their own path, but also broadcast a signal of safety to those who are lost. Dreaming of a lighthouse swaying in mist signals the need to strengthen inner stability, for living amid emotional fog is akin to sailing on stormy seas, easily losing one's direction. Not only landscapes, but also the animals in dreams, such as the owl representing intuition, the wolf symbolizing protective strength, and the deer indicating sensitivity to surrounding energies, offer invaluable guidance. By identifying and decoding these symbolic sequences, the The empath can gauge their level of empathy, recognize signs of depletion, and discover sources of renewal within their personal unconscious. Now that you clearly understand yourself and the messages of your unconscious, moving into the practice phase will ensure your empathic aura not only survives, but also shines sustainably. First, build and nurture your inner lighthouse through regular moments of silence. Weekly, set aside time to listen to your dreams. Record every image, sound, and lingering feeling upon waking. This practice allows you to distinguish the river of collective emotions, energies rushing through your mind from your personal well water, the inner source that deserves respect and cultivation. This not only replenishes your energy, but also sharpens your ability to perceive boundaries between yourself and the collective world. Next, construct a living fence rather than a rigid wall. A living fence is a set of flexible rules that helps you selectively engage with others, allowing them entry to your inner courtyard when you are ready, and knowing when to close the gate to protect your private spaces. This can be implemented by setting time limits for emotional sharing, defining the depth of your disclosures, or simply learning to say no to overwhelming requests. A living fence does not isolate you. Rather, it honors autonomy and keeps your energy in a state of abundance. Finally, turn your pain into treasure through an inner alchemy. When hardship, anger, or loneliness arise, do not shy away. Instead, let those flames burn. Apply mindfulness to your anger, asking, "What am I angry about? What lesson does this fire teach me?" Then, use that fire to refine the raw metal of your sensitive experiences into gold, profound wisdom and mature compassion. Each time you endure a challenge without being consumed, you are forging yourself, strengthening the core resilience that enables you to give safely and sustainably. Thank you so much for staying with me until the very end. Your willingness to explore the depths of your empathic gift and to walk through the challenges of boundaries, shadow work, and inner alchemy means the world. Remember, the journey you've begun is not a straight path, but a winding road of self-discovery, healing, and growth. I'd love to hear from you. What resonated most in today's video? Have you ever experienced the difference between being an unconscious sponge and a conscious mirror? Share your thoughts, insights, or personal stories in the comments below. Your journey can inspire and support others who are walking a similar path. If you found value in this discussion, please consider subscribing to the channel. By hitting the subscribe button and turning on notifications, you'll be the first to receive new videos designed to empower you with practical tools, mindful practices, and heartfelt encouragement. Together, we can build a community of conscious empaths who honor their rare aura and transform their wounds into wisdom. Your presence here is a gift, and I deeply appreciate your time, attention, and vulnerability. May you continue to cultivate your inner lighthouse, strengthen your living fence, and refine your personal alchemy. Keep shining your unique light, knowing that every step you take towards self-awareness and compassion makes the world a brighter, more connected place. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to growing alongside you. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep believing in your incredible journey.